Yes, we're doing it again, aren't we? Dedicating 64 shoeboxes for children. Those going to some who are nearby, perhaps, some very far away, we don't know. Boxes that are filled with modest gifts, but with a whole lot of love. Concern from people like you to share the good news of Jesus Christ to people who knows where. Spreading the bread out on the water, not knowing where it's going. And we've done it again, haven't we, with food collected for the Come Food Bank here in Cumberland. Food to be shared with folk who live around here who need both food for nourishment and some assurance that they are cared for, that someone remembers them, that there's a community that surrounds them. And we've done it again, haven't we? We've approved a budget a couple years ago that actually has an increase in benevolent giving. Meaning that the money that you give to this church, some of it will stay here, some of it, more than previously, is going to go away. It's going to go to others. It's going to support the ministries of the United Church of Christ, but it's also going to other benevolent institutions that care about people who need to know that they are loved. Every month in this church, we highlight one of the benevolent causes we believe in, always with a focus beyond ourselves. And so you could ask, well, when is it enough? When can we sit down and rest? Why is it always our turn to be giving? The key verse in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians is this: brothers and sisters, do not be weary in doing what is right. That's easier said than done. Do not be weary in doing what is right. Some people have called this faithfulness fatigue. Faithfulness fatigue. Asking good people, generous people, godly people to have their hearts touched again by some bona fide need somewhere, for someone in trouble, someone who needs to know that they are not alone. Good people ask to do that over and over again. We may wonder how we can respond time after time, wonder if what we really want to do is respond to these never-ending appeals over and over. So the dominant question is, how deep is your well? How deep is your well? Not how thick is your pocketbook or billfold, but how deep is your well? It's true that we give for many different kinds of reasons. Sometimes we give out of a sense of obligation. There are many stories about families who get into deep trouble because of some financial arrangements that have had less than good outcomes. Why do parents and siblings lend or borrow within the family with uncertain terms of what's expected, foggy plans for repayment? Why does that happen? Kind of family obligations, I suppose. The unwillingness to say no and not help. The unwillingness to say to a family member, not me, not now. Sometimes we give because we owe something to the person who is asking, and we just cannot say no to that particular person. They've asked, and I suppose I'm going to say yes. In major financial campaigns, careful thought is given as to the right person to ask the right person for a leading major gift, right? You have to find major givers asking major givers for major money. The feeling being that these major people cannot say no to someone of their same level of understanding. And sometimes we give just because we believe in the cause that's to be supported. We agree, that's important. We ought to do something about that. In the first 10 months of this year, you have given support to this church, making us a church that's dealing in the black for the first time in a long time. For the first time in a long time. To make sure this community of faith can carry on its ministry and its mission in this new setting. Only a very few people know who is giving what in terms of support to this church. But we give because we love this place. We believe in it. We believe in its past, but even more importantly, we believe in its future. And so as you fill out your stewardship cards this week and pass them in next Sunday, give not out of obligation, but because you believe in this congregation's future. And you want it to be a good future, a strong future. One that will carry on when some of us are gone and it's still here. Now, some would say that the well from which we draw as people has been tested a bit in the years that are now not too far past. There have been a number of misunderstandings in this congregation. If you go back about 10, 12, 15 years, tough times. There have been conflicts and struggles, and personalities have been hurt, and some things have happened that we wouldn't be very, very pleased with. We've had our shares of ups, and we've had some downs. I think basically more ups than downs, but everybody can make their own judgment about that. We are working our way back from what has been somewhat of a troubled history, wanting to write new chapters for the life of this church, chapters that reflect a congregation now working together in basic harmony, wanting the best for each other and for us as a community. In spite of the diversities that always will remain among us, we are not going to see a lot of things in the same way, but we're going to love each other, no matter what. Our deep well is based on the well that we receive from the God of Jesus Christ. It's not our own well. Our own wells often get dried up. The well that we as a church draw from and as individuals has made us spiritually healthy, financially healthy, able to embrace each other as brothers and sisters in Christ, as members of the body of Christ. And so as a community, we need to seek out that God well from which we need to draw. The source of our strength and our optimism and our hope. That life-giving water in that well is provided by a gracious God who has been with us in the past and can be counted on into our future. And we draw from that well daily, praying that God will be with us, will protect us, will nudge us when necessary, and sustain us no matter what the future may hold. I don't think there's any reason to doubt the well, or the water in the well, for that has always been God's gift to us. What we need to consider is our willingness to draw from that well and be sustained by what that God well has to offer. The great theological concept of the Protestant Reformation was the centrality of grace. It was a movement from you earn your way into God's grace from you are living in God's grace already. Already. It's the given of your life. Receive it. Not earned, just received. I think it's been easy to slip over into works righteousness mindset because that's the world in which you and I live. The thought that God's gifts and God's well-being for us are in direct relationship to our ability to do something for God. We live in that kind of transactional life on this good earth. That we ought to get what we deserve, that you get what you earn, that the reward is what we have done. And grace is just the opposite. It says you got it already. It's been God's gift to you from the beginning. What we know is the Protestant work ethic has usually been good in human constructs. That the more you work, the better you're going to be. But God's grace is on a different plane. The God who put this world together is the God who seeks to be intertwined into our daily lives. The God who called all of creation into being wants to bless each and every one of us, not occasionally, but always. Whether we think we have deserved the standards of grace or not. Not for us to know. God does it. So the well is there, the life-giving water is there for us, always has been, and I am convinced always will be. That we can count on. So I believe in this deep well of grace, deep enough to sustain each one of us in any circumstances we may confront. And I believe that there is within us, deep within us, an inborn desire to do good. That within human beings, there is an inborn desire to do good, to try to make the world a better place in which we live and others live, to live a good and lasting mark when we depart. I believe that alongside our cynicism about some other people, there is this stubborn inclination to think well of people. It's kind of deep in it. To think well of people, to will the best for them, to even reach out to them, those known to us and those unknown to us, people like the ones receiving the boxes. We don't know who they are. We believe we ought to do that, and that feels good when we do. Now certainly, that kind of blind trust can be betrayed, and it often is. And there are people who will take advantage of our best efforts, our willingness to share. But the well, the deep well from which we draw, is God's well of grace for the deserving and the undeserving, for those who will appreciate our benevolence and respond, and those who will seek to work the system and try to get a little more for themselves. Some of the food that we gather for the food bank will go to persons who will desperately need it to get to the end of the month. And for other people, it will just be food from a food bank. No thought of where it came from, who put it there, or any sense of gratitude. But that's really not my concern. And that, I don't think, is justification for our sharing. That we live and we share out of a sense of gratitude for God's providing care for us, that we take for granted, and yet it's there day by day. We give because the well from which we draw, has been there for us, and we are grateful. This well is as present as our daily prayers, as immediate as the concern we have for the neighbor, as life-giving as the love we have received from God in Jesus Christ. And we're just here to receive and then to share. We are approaching the season of Thanksgiving, which is a season of remembrance. Remembrance for God's provisions and grace that have blessed this nation and blessed us as individuals. It's a season of thanksgiving for the God who is enmeshed in our lives purposefully, seeking always to love us into the wholeness for which we were created. A season of thanksgiving for our calling to be God's ambassadors in this place, to give our witness to the Jesus Christ we have come to know and want to share that with others. Good news. A season of thanksgiving for a deep and sustaining well of grace, enough for every one of us, enough for a hurting and cynical world that needs to be loved, enough to be transformed personally into one more willing to live in grace. So find some time this week to pause, to count your blessings, to know that most of them are just surprises. They come to us. Thank God. The well has been there. Thank God. Amen.